job. Make sure your vehicle is safely raised and supported. The front wheels will have to get chalked off because if you raise the rear end, there will be nothing holding your vehicle from rolling because obviously the front wheels spin freely. So take off this cover. And take off your lug nuts. What you want to do next is take this drum off. Mine is actually seized onto the hub. As you can see, I can spin it freely, so the brake shoes are not engaged. If your brake shoes are engaged, you're going to have to back off the shoes a little bit, which I can show you how to do later after I take this off. There's a little window in the back that you can go through. Mine are free, so I know it's seized onto the hub, so I'm going to spray it with some rust penetrant. And then you want to hammer it here in between the studs. Just make sure not to hammer the studs, and that should hopefully break it free. There we go, that popped off. It should be pretty free now. There you go. What I want to do next is just use some parts cleaner, clean off the brake dust that's here so I don't breathe it in as I'm disassembling it. The next thing you want to do is, if you look at this long clip right here, you want to pop it out of this brake shoe. I'm using a screwdriver to help pry it out. The next thing I want to do is take the spring out. I'm going to use some locking pliers. They do make a tool for it, and I don't have it though, so the reason I use locking pliers is because once you lock them on, it won't let go of the spring, so I won't be able to go flying out. So lock them on here and take the spring out. Then take off this lever and then take off your adjuster. And this is what you're going to have to adjust if your drum brake doesn't come off because it's stuck to the shoes. From the back right there, you'll see a window, and you want to take a screwdriver and twist this gear until your adjuster is loose enough. Okay, take this off, and now take off your shoes. You can take this spring out by just pulling it upwards. It has a little hook on the bottom that it sits in. And last but not least, you're gonna have to unhook the e-brake mechanism. To release this shoe from the parking brake cable, you wanna take this end, push it down, and underneath this horseshoe, there's a little spring here. There you go. Pull that out. What you want to do next is clean the backing plate. So I'm going to take a wire brush, and you want to clean all these spots where the shoes ride on both sides, and you also want to clean the hub. You want to clean the rust off the hub. I'm going to start with the hub. With all the old parts laid out here, you want to inspect the spring if you don't have a new one and make sure it's not damaged or stretched. This one's good, so I can reuse it. Do the same with this lever here, make sure it's not bent or cracked. This big horseshoe spring here I know is good, so all that I can reuse. And lastly, I have the adjuster for the shoes. I want to take this all apart and clean it. This is a reverse thread here, and once it's clean, I'm going to lubricate it so that it can function properly and not seize up. All right, with this all cleaned up, I'm going to take this threaded part and grease it up. You don't need a lot of grease, just a little bit to cover the threads. Once the threads are covered, go ahead and start it in. Remove any excess grease, and I'm actually going to put it in this end because in that end goes the part that is not threaded. That needs to be greased as well. Before you put this back, don't forget that it had this spring clip looking piece, and the way it goes on is it has two cutouts. The hook goes on the small cutout and the fold goes on the larger cutout. And then you can combine these two together, give it a few spins, make sure everything works as it should. Back here at the wheel, if your hub is not clean like this one, go ahead and clean it with a wire brush, spray it down. I'm going to apply some anti-seize. That's going to prevent the drum from sticking in the future. And the reason I'm doing it now before the brakes go on is because I don't want to get any of this on the brakes themselves. Next thing I want to do is add some grease. I use caliper grease on these areas where the shoes ride on the backing plate. It's important to lubricate it so they can slide properly. And I like to also put it down underneath where they hook onto this, to their mounting location. Of course, don't forget about this side. You don't need much. If you put too much, it'll actually get onto the drum, and that's bad. So just a light coating, and I also like to put it in here. It'll make them operate nice and quietly and smoothly. And the next step is going to be reattaching this parking brake. Make sure that the parking brake cable and spring go through their retainer in here underneath the axle. Once it's in there, you can go ahead and push it. Make sure this little bullet looking thing comes through. You can help it along with a screwdriver. Okay, make sure that it rests all the way up in here at the top of the hook, not any lower, because if it's any lower, it has the chance of popping out. Once your parking brake cable is going through its little hook down there, go ahead and insert this spring. It's easiest to do it now. It'll be a little harder to do it later. Take this shoe, flip it over, and this is a little tricky now. What I'm going to do is attach some large locking pliers to this spring so I can pull back on it. As I pull back, I'm going to insert the shoe and then just let go of the spring. You don't have to seat the spring into its hole yet. I'm going to put the other shoe on first, and I'm going to do the same thing. Make sure that this one goes the right way, because you can accidentally put it this way. It's just not going to fit anything. This is where the adjuster goes in the spring. So pull this back, insert your shoe, and let go. At this point, you can try to seat this spring. There's one. Hold your shoe at the same time and slide it in there. I know it's not seated at the top, but that's okay, because now I can take it and slide it into where it belongs. Make sure it's all seated properly. Next, I'm going to insert the adjuster. The adjuster is going to go with the star wheel facing the rear, and the larger part of the fork is going to go in the front on both sides. So start this in on this side, and then take your shoe, pull it out, and start in the other side. At this point, you can hook in this adjuster, just like that. On this little hook here goes the spring, and to install this spring, I like to use some small needle nose pliers and just hook it right onto the shoe. All right, now comes time to installing the drum. Before I install the drum, I'm gonna mount it. I'm gonna hang it like this backwards, and I'm gonna clean the inner surface of it. This is important because you don't want any oils getting onto your brakes. And they do coat these with oil from the factory. That's the only thing that's gonna prevent them from rusting. If you happen to get any grease or oils on the shoes, now is the time to clean it. Mine are good, so I'm gonna install this drum. And at this point, I wanna spin the wheel, I wanna spin the axle, and listen for the shoes touching the drum. You want a little bit of drag on them. These are drum brakes, so you want them to drag a little bit, but not too much. This is just completely free spinning here, so I need to adjust this. And to adjust it, I'm going to widen the adjuster here. This is going to expand the shoes outward. Mine was very loose, so I'm going to go out quite a bit. And this is just a trial and error process. Sometimes you overdo it, like I just did. There we go. This now has a little bit too much drag on it, so I'm going to actually loosen it up. This is almost perfect. I'm going to loosen it up just a little bit more, and then it'll be all set. All right, let's try that. Okay, this is perfect. I can hear just a little bit of drag, not too much. I can still easily spin it, but I can hear the brakes touching, so that's perfect. That's exactly what you want. At this point, you can apply the parking brake once or twice. That'll seat the shoes even better. You can test it again. I've already done that, and I know this is perfect. So at this point, let's put on the wheel. Start on all of your lug nuts, and we'll bottom them out and torque them to 140 foot-pounds. Don't forget about your lug nut cover. All right, let's raise it up and put some fluid in it. Okay, everything's back together. Go ahead and pump up your brakes, take it for a road test, and make sure you don't hear any weird noises.